sorry, a little too megalomaniacal of me. How can this be resolved?
I wrote an op-ed that was published in the American Conservative, talks about a path to peace for Ukraine.
A path to peace.
Yes. And I said, the Europeans really need to take control of this crisis. They've effectively abdicated their responsibilities entirely to the United States. They've left it in the hands of the Biden White House. And unfortunately, I think the Biden White House has talked itself into a box from which it cannot escape. It's similar to LBJ, who very much wanted to end the Vietnam War. In fact, I'm not sure he wanted to get into it to begin with, but he very much wanted to end it. But he couldn't possibly do it because he'd made all of these strident policy remarks from which he couldn't retreat. And I think President Bush has done the same thing with Putin and Russia. And so we're stuck with this, yes, Russian hostility, Russians must be punished. But every time we get close to actually stepping into the conflict, I think President Biden stands up and says, but I don't want any war. But it doesn't change anything. So I think Berlin and Paris, along with all the states that border Ukraine and Russia right now in Europe, really need to say, wait a minute, stop. We need a ceasefire.
Right.
And we'll sit with President Putin and President Zelensky. We will hammer out a solution. And number one on the hit list that absolutely needs to be accepted immediately is neutrality. There's no reason why Ukraine has to be part of NATO. And the notion that if it isn't, it's somehow or another at risk is crazy. The opposite is the case. It'll end up like Austria. It'll be out of the game. And the Austrians have enjoyed enormous prosperity. For the first time, just 10, 15 years ago, Austria finally passed Germany in terms of its standard of living. Austria was always behind Germany. Why? Because it's out of it. It's not part of the problem. It's not wasting trillions on defense. It's not a battleground. That's what Ukraine needs, not more war. And I think Putin will be very receptive to that. What he wants is to know that this neighboring state is not going to be turned into a Trojan horse aimed at Russia. And it's very clear from Victoria Nuland has said, and everything we've heard from the Biden administration, and by the way, our friend Boris Johnson in London, that's exactly what we want. We want it to be a Trojan horse. We want Ukraine to be a knife at Russia's throat, which is silly. It's unnecessary. It's stupid.
Boris Johnson is a great disappointment for a man who came to power as a so-called conservative. He's turned out to be nothing but identical to a globalist in every way imaginable. And aside from that, a great party animal. But the two parts to this puzzle that you just mentioned are conciliation, neutrality. And the other day I was hopeful when Zelensky, the comedian, came out of his stupor of egomaniacal behavior and narcissism. I've been saying the man looks to me like he's stuck in his own opera where he's the hero. It's always about him. He came out and said, I'm getting a little cooler on joining NATO. That's while his cities are crumbling and 2 million people are being driven out of his own nation. What is wrong with this man? And yet you see Americans saying, he's like Churchill, as I said before. He's fighting for his nation. He's destroying his nation, in my opinion. Now, I know that this is not a popular opinion. And I don't know. I think you agree with me. I'm not trying to drag you into my worldview. I think Zelensky is the problem. I think he should be pushed aside by the leadership in Ukraine. Is there anyone else there other than him? Who's number two? Who's number three?
Well, the problem is that I think most of the people surrounding Mr. Zelensky are very radicalized, and most of them are Western Ukrainians with this permanent condition of hostility to Russia. That's part of the problem. Some people have suggested to me that Mr. Zelensky is at risk of losing his life if he seems to buckle. And
you mean from his own people?
That's what I'm hearing, from some of his own. At the same time, I don't think, though, he's really the man of the hour. The man of the hour, if he wanted to be the man of the hour, is President Biden. He's the man that holds all the cards. He could step in and say, wait a minute, stop. We will accept neutrality. That's quite clear. Let's convene a conference and sort the rest of it out.
I see.
I think
I agree I think Biden's been doing a remarkable job of restraint, by the way, for not sticking himself into this more deeply.
Yes, and I think he is, strangely enough, the Lone Ranger at this point inside his own administration.
So I see what you're saying.
It's very strange. We went through this with President Trump, who prevented war with Iran.
Yes,
single-handedly when he was essentially ambushed by his administration into it. And I think he was the one who said, I'm not comfortable fomenting potential conflict by sending more military assistance to Ukraine. How does this help us build bridges to Russia? Of course, he was pilloried. This is the Russiagate nonsense for that. So I guess it would be nice if President Biden could do it, but I don't see it happening. That's why I pleaded in this essay, Europeans, you must take control. You must stand up. Unfortunately, I think we've lulled them into a sort of state of permanent dependency. We don't have an alliance in Europe. What we really have are protectorates.